So Season 2 of Delta Force brought with it a handful of new weapons. In my previous videos, I went over the new SMG and some builds for that, but in this video, we're going to be going over another one of those new weapons, being the new light machine gun, the QJB201, which is a 5.8 by 42 millimeter LMG. And similar to that SMG, this is a pretty unique weapon, and it sits kind of in the middle of all of the other LMGs, has a pretty decent fire rate, not the highest for the LMGs, but still pretty decent. But then the stats on this thing, while fully built, get kind of ridiculous. And in a similar way to the new SMG, there is another piece of the weapon that can modify its fire rate and a lot of its stats. And instead of the bolt like on the SMG, this LMG has the gas block. And very similar to the SMG, you have two gas blocks that do completely different things. You have the stable gas block that pretty heavily increases a lot of this weapon's stats you can find on the stat card, but then it also reduces the fire rate down to 714. But you can also use the rapid gas block that will reduce the range and control, but it ups the fire rate to 873. Now the gas blocks on this weapon don't seem to do as much as the bolt did on the SMG. This one just reduces the range a bit and the control a bit. So if you want the higher fire rate on this LMG, it's actually going to be much more usable to use the rapid gas block, but we're going to be using the stable gas block for the highest control version of this build. And then for the barrel, we're going to be using the new type sledgehammer tactical barrel. This is going to be the longer barrel. It's going to give a lot more stats for the weapon, especially at medium to longer ranges. And this is a weapon you'll be able to use at longer ranges. And then for the muzzle device, if you're going to be going loud, we're going to be going the titanium contest muzzle brake. And with this whole build and this muzzle brake, we are going to have max out control. But if you do want to go silence, I would still recommend the advanced multi-caliber suppressor. That will drop the control a bit and doesn't have as high as control as the other silencers, but it doesn't drop the handling by a ton like the other silencers do. Like this M7, which is probably the next best silencer, drops it by 8. This one doesn't. You already don't have the best handling, especially when you're using a silencer. So I would generally recommend the advanced multi-caliber suppressor if you're going suppressed. And like most of the builds I've been going over recently, I would definitely recommend using a tactical device. Pretty much any color of laser pointer is going to be fine, and you'll find these on pretty much any of the higher end builds now. And what these tactical devices do when they're on is they massively improve the accuracy, but more importantly, they improve the handling massively. And one of the most noticeable parts of handling being low is a really slow ADS speed. So that's massively improved with the tactical device. And what this allows you to do is just keep it on, and it allows you to put more stats into stability and control, but you can still get that massive handling boost from the tactical device. But then we go down to our foregrip, and we're using the Secret Order bevel foregrip. Now this is going to massively improve all of our horizontal control on the weapon. Now if you felt like this weapon was easier to control horizontally, you could use the Resonant Ergonomic Grip, which does all vertical instead of horizontal. Now if you want to check this on any weapon you're building, just go to the view details, go down to the details, go down to control, and you'll be able to see your actual recoil pattern. And one of the things with this LMG is it has a lot of horizontal recoil, because you can see here the recoil pattern for this weapon goes off to the left, and that's already while having a horizontal control grip on it. If I didn't have that and I went vertical, this would be even more crazy. So I would definitely recommend using the horizontal control grip with this specific weapon. And then for our grip, we are going to be using the Your Spec Ops tactical stock. That's just going to give us the most control possible, letting us get up to that 100 control. Then for the rear grip, we're using the new type sword heavy grip again, just going to give you the best stats possible. And then for the magazine, I would definitely recommend switching up the magazine, even if you're not using this full build, because what's kind of unique with this weapon is that it starts with a belt fed box mag. I think it's 100 rounds, but you can switch this up to even a 60 rounder, and it does increase your control. It both increases control and handling compared to the belt fed box mag, which I don't think happens on a lot of other weapons. I don't think a lot of other weapons go from a box mag and get a control increase from changing it, but generally the 60 rounder rounder is going to be fine, and you don't want that pretty massive handling reduction sticking with the 100 rounder. So I definitely recommend at least going with the 60 rounder. You could even go a 45 rounder, but it only gives +1 handling, so honestly the 60 rounder is going to be best in my opinion. And then for all of our handguard patches, I just went and increased to stability on all of them. Gives us a bit more stability. You always want more stability with fully automatic weapons, and with our tactical device and 25 handling, the weapon isn't too slow to use, but if I was actually going to be using this, I might switch these up to handling, but that really depends on what type of player you are. And then for our sights, you can use whatever you want. You can use this sight at medium and even longer ranges. The accuracy isn't actually too bad, but just to keep things simple, I'm still keeping it with one of the red dots. And because we already have max out control, what you can do is use a micro sight riser. This will give you more handling, but reduce your control by 1, but we still have 100 control even when using this. And then you just put any of the red dot sights you want on top of it. And then going into our calibration, you can usually do whatever you want in here, but starting off with the sight, anytime I'm using a red dot sight, I'm pretty much upping the zoom to max, and I'm reducing the eye relief. Upping the zoom just gives the sight more zoom, and reducing the eye relief just makes your character closer to the sight when ADSing, which is something I generally just like with a lot of sights in the game. Now, since this weapon has 100 control, I'm not actually sure if adding more control through the calibration does anything, so I've not been doing that when I'm doing these 100 control builds now. But going to the barrel, I did increase the length. This gives us more muzzle velocity, but reduces ADS speed. I think muzzle velocity for the barrel is really good on almost every weapon. Then for the foregrip, we upped our thickness, which gives us more stability while moving. It does reduce our ADS move speed, but it's an LMG. You're not going to really be moving around a ton anyway, especially when in a fight. On the rear grip, we didn't change anything, and then we also didn't change anything on the stock. And that brings us to our ammo options for this weapon, and we have everything from green all the way up to orange. Now, if you're using a weapon this built that's going to be this expensive, I would never recommend using below blue ammo. And generally, if you're using a fully built weapon, you're going to want to be using purple and up. Now, the prices of this ammo, specifically when talking about purple and orange, are a little bit more expensive than some of the other rounds, but it's not too far off a lot of the other weapons, so it's generally going to be around the average price for purple and orange ammos. So not really too bad. If you're going to be using the blue ammo's basically the average of blue ammo in the game. Blue ammo penetrating level 3, purple's level 4, orange is level 5. If you're doing orange, you definitely better be running normal with really high gear, because you're also going to be spraying out a lot of ammo. This weapon does have a decently high fire rate, even with the lower fire rate gas block. But generally, especially with a weapon this expensive, doing fully built, I would recommend at least purple. Now, something that's also pretty interesting with LMGs is that they have the bigger mags, and they're generally more controllable than a lot of the other ARs, but they're obviously going to be less wieldy in general, so they're a bit slower to use. But if you get into a head-to-head fight and everything is equal, I think a lot of the times an LMG would end up coming out on top. And it's also really good for fighting multiple people at a time, because you're not going to run out of ammo as quickly. So even sticking with purple, even if you're on higher difficulties, I think will generally be fine. If you're still running in easy difficulties, maybe make the weapon build a bit cheaper and then go with the blue ammo. But that's the entirety of the highest control build for the new QJB201, and I think this LMG is going to be used quite a bit, whether it be in operations or in warfare. These builds obviously a bit more specific for operations, but this LMG feels pretty good, and while it does have a bit wilder recoil than some of the other LMGs, I think this LMG sits pretty well in the middle of the other weapons, has a bit higher fire rate than the slower fire rate LMGs, but it still has pretty good stats, and is pretty controllable for that higher fire rate. And once you get into the groove of using this weapon, and you could just say spray at multiple targets, I think this weapon is going to start to feel really good. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.